for the water infrastructure for the farmers so they can continue to get their very cheap water. You've probably seen this map before, but just to go over it again, we've got 8,000 proposed new homes. Just in this area, we have 8,000 already entitled lots. So developers could go out, pull permits on those today and start building. So that's, and then we've got over 12,000 approved in South Folsom here. So traffic on Highway 50, which is already bad, you can imagine which direction it's going. Kind of major projects, well, Dixon Ranch is next up. Next week, it goes to the Planning Commission. 605 homes on Green Valley Road. They say no traffic problems.
Junk science.
Yes, exactly. Central 88, Saratoga, Bass Lake Hills, Marble Valley, Lime Rock, Sandstino, Tilden Park. And so that's just from Shingle Springs to the county line. There are a ton of developments up in Diamond Springs, El Dorado, mostly multifamily.
Sandstino's got a new name. I don't recall what it is. But we probably got to start changing the charts for the new name because that's one of the common things too. You change the name to disguise the project, right?
Yes,
So.
that's right. That's right. So as you can see, lots of homes coming. Kind of the realities of housing in the West County, our housing element, which is one of the few items that the state requires us to do as a county, was certified in 2013. And it says in there that we have excess housing in all of the income categories. So we have excess low-cost housing, excess moderate housing, and excess above moderate housing. We still have 15,000 lots which are entitled throughout the county. I meant 8,000 of them about in El Dorado Hills. We don't need any more housing. And then all these projects coming up, Central EDH, Dixon Ranch, et cetera, these are all discretionary. They are not part of the general plan. They don't need to be built. The developers have no right to build them. They have the right to ask to build them, but they don't have the right to actually build them. On the waterfront, this is a really complicated issue, so I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. The EID board is very friendly to Parker Development and other developers. Dale Coco, George Osborne, and Bill George in particular, those three seem to vote for the developers every time. In spite of Dale Coco running on exactly the opposite platform. Alan Day and Greg Preda seem to be the only ones that are voting for us, the residents here. EID claims there's enough water to build out the general plan as it's spec'd out. But there's not enough water for all these general plan amendment projects that I just showed you, Marble Valley, Central EDH, et cetera. But the funny thing is that EID hands out water meters on a first come, first served basis. So if Dixon Ranch comes in and gets approved and they are first to the draw, they'll get all these water meters. Well, then EID's out of water, so you have to go back and get more water rights, build more water infrastructure, et cetera, to deliver all this stuff. Well, guess who pays for all that new infrastructure? We do. In the meantime, I mentioned the farmers. These ag rates are, their water is a marginal cost at 1/17 of what the residential users pay. And it's the same water. It's treated, it's chlorinated, it's piped, it's drinkable, but they pay 1/17 of what you do.
So Sandstino is now called Mill Creek, just for FYI.
Mill Creek.
Mill Creek.
It's 600 homes in there that use it.
645, I think is still the number. Yeah.
So, there are all kinds of strategies to try to fight these developments. You'll have your own strategies with your group. That's, we're not really talking about those tonight. We're going to focus mainly on the CEQA issue here. But, in terms of political elections, recalls, lobbying commissioners and supervisors, robocalls, you've already been doing a lot of reaching out on social media. That's great. Advisory vote, Measure E, that's great. I don't know if the supervisors are going to listen to that or not. It's interesting. So on the legal front, and I really think you need to approach both of these in parallel. Because it may turn out that all of these efforts fail, and then you're left with this as your only recourse. And really, it's important to hire some legal counsel pretty early on in the process. The attorney that we work with, Tom Infacino, has successfully sued our county multiple times in the past, and he likes to get in early in the process, so he can work with the groups. We talked to him about this informational meeting tonight, and he seemed to be okay with us, kind of giving the basics to the group. I encourage you to contact Tom, or maybe Wayne, you can get the ball rolling, but essentially, I'll kind of tell you why you need legal counsel.
What was his last name, please?
Infusino, Infusino.
Thank you very much.
And he was back on the Measure Y days, so he's been doing this for a long time in this county. He knows this process very, very well.
Do we have a group? I mean, do we have a group that's either a official group? I mean, this is an informal meeting of people who are interested. Are we a group that can hire this attorney? And where do we get the funds to pay for this attorney?
Yes,
Or is there another group that we want to, that's already in existence? I just don't know how this works.
There is a new group, but the group that's been successful with pursuing these lawsuits is Rural Communities United. So whether or not that's the group that's willing to have this part of it, the activities or not, is probably a matter for discussion.
But is there a representative from the president or the?
Well, so
Oh, okay,
Ellen and I are kind of running Rural Communities
Right.
United, and
okay.
we have a group of people who are kind of funding our lawsuit against the county on the general plan update. And so that is our big interest is.
And the town center apartments too, you've got
That's a different
involvement with
group.
that. Different group? Okay.
Yeah. So there's a different group.
We're
Yeah,
participating.
the other group that's suing for the apartment buildings is Save Our County,
Okay,
which is all the way up in Shingle Springs.
Right.
okay.
And they put up the money for the lawyer, and that case comes up Monday, and I don't know what time it appears on the docket. Does anybody know?
And that seemed to me it was early.
No, I heard that.
I was gonna go online, and I will go online tomorrow, I promise, and see if I can find out, and then I will email John, whatever.
Okay. I assume that the hearing and some decision would be at a later date, that I don't know the details.
Right.
So,
Okay.
But it's, all right, so if, it would seem to me that if a group, if we talk to Tom and we let it be known that we have even started to consider hiring an attorney or have hired an attorney or consulting with an attorney, then that gives us immediately more leverage against Parker, if you would, because of the development that the golf course development.
potentially, at the board hearing here what was it, November 10th or so, our attorney spoke, at the podium, and of course, there was a lot of, two of the supervisors feigned a lot of outrage that we would have an attorney come and represent us, and so it kind of works both ways, right? But I would recommend contacting Tom. I don't know if he has enough time. He will have to manage his own time, and he's also working similar issues are taking place kind of up and down the foothills, so Calaveras County, Amador County, and he's helping with people in those counties. The developers have kind of moved out of the Bay Area because people have finally caught on to the way they do business there. And so they're up here where we're ripe for the picking. The counties are poor, they want money, they're pushovers to, ram this development through, and, the environmental consequences are be damned.
But doesn't your lawsuit over the general plan that protects the golf course too? I mean, if you were to win, right?
No, not necessarily. It doesn't, our lawsuit does not impact necessarily any specific projects. It impacts the update of the general plan and the rezoning of 37,000 lots across our county, and few other things.
And the new DIR just came out is a separate issue completely, and you're gonna go on, we'll talk about how we can get the record to show that it's got problems, and set the foundation for another law. Cause hate to say it, but the only way they get the board's attention is to sue.
Right, yeah, we need to move forward on that one. Is there anything else we need to know you didn't really go over, other than general?
So let me go through, we'll get into more detail here, definitely. So a big part of the task here, and what you would be working on, is building what's called the administrative record. And so this means you need to comment on everything you can find in the draft EIR that's an issue, and we'll get into more detail on that. You need to write letters to the supervisors and the planning commissioners. You need to dig up supporting documents that, show evidence that your case has some merit. And all of this stuff needs to go in the public record. At some point, you'll have to submit it to the county, and they will have to put it in their document system called Legistar.
At some point makes it sound it's far off, and really, it's all part of this draft EIR.
Right. Okay,
So
well,
you have, 60 days.
yeah, I'll get to that in a minute.
January 19th, I think, is what I learned last night.
And then one of the important items here too is you have to kind of show that you've exhausted your administrative remedies. You've attended all these meetings, you've written letters, you've yelled at the supervisors, you've commented, you've tried to show they were wrong, and that all has to be part of the record. That way the judge can say, okay, these guys really did try. They're not just here after the fact whining about it. Okay? And then, your point once the project is passed would be to litigate on the grounds of an insufficient EIR. Depending on, different attorneys work this different ways. Some attorneys, may say, oh, I want X dollars up front. If we are awarded anything, you'll get paid back some portion, some or all of the money that you put in. There are lots of different ways that can work. And the town center case is a different attorney. It's not Tom Casino, and she worked a different way than Tom does. And so there is a chance to get your money back on this. And sometimes what will happen is the attorney will bill you at a lower rate than they normally would, and so your group doesn't have to come up with this $400 an hour to pay the attorney. They come up with some very, very reasonable rate. Then if the case is won, the attorney can possibly win back fees at their normal billing rate or some portion of that. So. Again, the kind of the project approval process. Project comes in to the county. There's this big CEQA process, which we'll talk about in more detail. You are here. Goes to the planning commission. Planning commission makes a recommendation. Board of Supervisors frequently completely ignores the recommendation from the planning commission. They then typically approve or deny it, and then at that point, if it's approved, litigation is really, that's the only way to appeal the decision. And after the approval, they have to file this paperwork called a notice of determination, and you have 30 days from that filing to file your lawsuit.
And if you don't,
You're out of luck.
You can live in a bunch of ugly houses.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life.
You said that the Board of Supervisors frequently overrules or ignores the planning commission. Is the planning commission, is there a representative from each supervisor, or how does that get together? And why do they ignore what the experts in the planning commission supposedly recommend?
Well, the planning commission is volunteer essentially. They get $100 a meeting. Okay.
But they're appointed.
They're appointed by each supervisor appoints a planning commissioner. And the commissioners have their own self-interests also. As you may have noticed, last year during the World Series, one of the planning commissioners up the hill starred in a TV commercial against measures M, N, and O.
Right.
And paid for by Parker Development. So, there you go. The planning commission, we have found, can sometimes be swayed with facts. If there are enough people there with enough good arguments, you can sometimes make some progress with the planning commission. In fact, on town center apartments, they voted, was it 5-0?
6-0,
Yeah.
or 5-0.
I think it was fun.
It's
It's 5-0.
to not recommend town center apartments. Well, the board approved it.
4-1.
Yeah, 4-1. So, there you go. This is a little more fact-based. This is almost purely politically based. And so, that's kind of the difference there.
Can I ask one quick question? If we needed more time, is it possible, I'm just doing a little bit of research, I've seen a writ of mandate. Would the writ of mandate come in, or is it too late for that now? Or?
Well, frequently you can ask for an extension on the review period for the draft EIR. I think we're kind of past that point where you could ask for an extension. It usually has to be pretty early in the process, like right when it first comes out and you find out, oh, I only have 60 days.
And that's why, I learned last night, Parker was really kind of under the wire. They didn't really meet with anybody. I tried to meet with them and
Well, that's a
no,
good
but then that's right, I got nowhere. And then as soon as, they're well into it and we're at this point, then they had the public meeting last night. And it's almost too late. January 19th
Yes.
is the end of the 60 days,
And
so,
of course, they do it over the holidays. So
Exactly.
everybody's busy.
Yeah.
right.
But if they weren't available, then you can't meet with them. So they really created an obstruction for that. So,
Well, no, but I was just an individual.
Mhm.
The promise was that, and this was back in July and August, was that we're going to get going and then it just kind of extended out. Now, looking back, it's very clear, but
Right.
last night I found out that kind of is the protocol, is to, at the very end, kind of quickly move it through and then
Right.
we're too late, it was very
So-
clear last night.
But APAC has asked for a public presentation,
Right,
and they have not responded yet. And if they're not gonna respond, then we'll contact the planning department saying they're not cooperating.
Right.
They're not providing information. So therefore, they're not serving the public.
They canceled on me too. I had an appointment in November and they canceled on me.
It'd be a great
They
time to
moved
ask
it
for
all the way up
extension.
to 17.
But they
That's
still
right.
don't do it.
When you say
Then
they
ask for the
cancel-
extension. That's probably the thing goes together.
Publinas, yeah,
Yeah.
called me at home, I think,
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
and canceled.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah,
That
well,
was
I
usually
have
pretty
the
good about that. That's interesting.
emails, yeah.
Okay, I don't know about a writ to extend the review period.
Well, it's not a writ to extend the review, if you can, what I've read, Diamond, is it called Diamond Springs?
Mhm.
And Cameron Park, 2 writs were used. And but they were a function of a complaint about part of the process, and it kind of stopped everything for a while. And I asked last night, Mr. Trout, what would happen if, well, we don't like those. So, I don't know much more than what I read, so that's why I'm
Writs are
asking.
issued by judges.
Right,
So
exactly,
there has to be
yeah.
a lawsuit that's already commenced.
Or
which-
you have to go to an attorney and get one,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
An attorney would write a request
Right.
for a writ. In fact, you did that on Measure E, didn't you?
Yeah, so I just wondered if that was another tool in the arsenal. Not really?
I don't know on what grounds a judge would issue a writ. I mean, you'd have to make it.
How about, excuse me, when I get stressed, I stutter. When I read that EIR report, it says that according to Serrano LLC, there's only trace asbestos found on this site, okay? So, at that point, and in addition to that, the mitigation consists of, and these are quotes, from the same gentleman. We have a dust truck. There's a guy that runs around the county in a dust truck. I said, you have one person around the county that's reviewing all construction sites for mitigation?
Mhm.
Yes. Well, he has 4 or 5 people that work for him. I said, and now let me get this straight. You're gonna dig a hole and bury any hazardous waste you find back in the hole. Oh, yes, I am. We don't wanna truck it anywhere. I said, well, speaking of trucking it, where do you truck it? Oh, Potrero. But that's too expensive. We can't do that. In fact, we handle all hazardous waste here, things like DDT, we bury it under the roadway.
Well, we'll talk
So
about.
those would be issues.
We'll
would
talk
they not?
about mitigation in a minute, but I don't know that a judge would issue a writ to kind of throw a wrench in the process at this point. You know, your opportunity right here is to respond to all of those.
We will, we are.
concerns,
We're gonna get
and-
administrative, yes.
Right, and that has to be documented in this record on the draft EIR. Now, the final EIR has to address those comments if you write them in the right form. And we'll talk about that in a minute here.
Can I interject something?
Sure.
All those things that you're talking about,
Yeah,
those are exactly the kind of things that you're supposed to be addressing right now in the draft
that's
EIR.
what, yeah, okay.
So this is the time to do that. You don't need a writ to do that. You need to use this time.
Okay.
And I agree,
And you
it's
do
very,
exactly all that stuff.
I agree, it's very limited time
It
and,
is.
you know, they purposely,
Yeah.
as we mentioned, put this out around the holidays.
Exactly.
Now, one thing that you really always have to do is watch the county website. If you think something is gonna come out, the day it comes out, if you know a supervisor or a planning commissioner, they can help ask for an extension on the review period. We had gotten a pretty good extension on the general plan update EIR out to what, 120,
Oh my God,
Something.
we use it every one of those days.
yeah. We did.
So you need to be working on this now.
So what do we watch for on the website? The website's a holy mess.
Right, so there's if you go to the main page down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a link that allows you to sign up for email
I have
updates.
that, okay,
And you can choose which subjects you wish to receive the
Okay.
updates for.
okay.
And
Which commissions, which hearings, which, yeah,
And so what
or
would you
supervisor
recommend?
meetings.
So anything to do with elder, what?
Go through the list.
Okay,
yeah, you'll have to just look at the list, anything you're interested in, put a little check next to it. You'll probably get too much email and you'll want to
Right.
unsubscribe from some of
The
those.
long-range planning for sure.
But you can
Probably
also-
everything associated with CDA, the
Can we
Community
get a-
Development Agency.
Can we
But
get a hard copy of
Community
the EIR?
Development Agency,
Because that
CDA.
thing, I can't get into it half the time,
oh, yeah, that's right,
and it
absolutely,
dumps.
yeah, exactly.
So is there, like the library, can we borrow a hard copy for a
Uh,
month and then give it back?
Hard copy of what?
Yeah, the thing, every
You can
time you
go to-
download it, it explodes.
you have to,
Is that right?
you
Yeah.
can purchase one. Go
Yeah,
to-
I've downloaded it, and it's been there good
I'll
forever.
give you a I've
I don't know, get it.
download on my computer, it's a PDF.
That's
It's
it, you
great.
download the
Except-
PDF and it explodes on you?
I can't, and or it lasts 10 minutes and it crashes.
But,
Well, I wouldn't do it here tonight, but we have a slow internet here, but I've got copies of it, so all you need,
Yeah, if you wanna
you give me a zip drive and I'll put it on, or a USB, whatever.
Yeah, that would be great. You can get hard printed copies up at the county, they charge you some,
There's 1,000 pages.
yes, right.
yeah, and there's an addendum that goes with that I'm not sure, they have a CD, I don't know if all of it's on there or not, but when I asked about it, it's called, they call it Rules 223 point something.
Oh, that's the fugitive test.
Yeah, exactly. And I was shocked that the senior planner didn't know about it, didn't have the information, but they've got an arrangement going on with, what's his name's, Parker's consultants that were on his side as just his consultants, and now they're employed by El Dorado County, and they're those consultants. And what they're gonna do, I mean, if you go to the consultant's website, they have, job listings for just about anybody that you can think of, except they don't list cleaning the county planning office, they don't have that. But, and I asked him, I said, so I pulled a long time to get this. And I said, so the way it's gonna work is you're just gonna buy turnkey and drop it down in, and if they need any help doing anything, that's who's gonna do this, right?
Right.
Yeah, you knew all that already?
Yeah, the planning department here is heavily infiltrated with developers and
Oh, yeah,
good old boys and,
oh, yeah.
you know, Tom Infacino, our attorney, mentioned that, oh yes, so many of the names are the same now as they were 20 years ago in this previous lawsuit, you know, it's the same good old boys that are working the system to get their own benefit.
Thank you.
Well,
Before you move on, Lenny, you asked about the library, you can check, you can't check them out, you can just go in there and look at it. If you want the hard copy, you have to buy it, go to the county.
You don't want a hard copy, you want a PDF so you can search.
Right, you
The-
can find
The hard
everything else.
copy is, I
To
got
be able to
it,
search
don't even wanna
that
look at it.
is outstanding.
Yeah, it's a
When you plug in
feature.
asbestos and you find every place it's
Right.
meant.
Right.
It's a big
Right.
But sometimes you just want a hard copy to tag, and those are really useful, and if you're one of those people, go purchase one. That's the best one.
So we talked about, you are here in the CEQA process. Here, what is CEQA? California Environmental Quality Act. I think, Wayne, you were in on the early days of that. The purpose is really to kind of uncover possible environmental impacts of projects, inform the public, and either avoid or mitigate the impacts if possible. And it's supposed to look at all these different areas here in the EIR. One thing that's important to realize is it doesn't cover economic impact. So if you make comments about, oh, you know, this will cost our county XYZ gazillion dollars, they say, comment noted. Right. And
So no money.
So if you said that it's not economically feasible for the county to allow a certain project to happen, you're saying that they won't even look at that?
then not in CEQA. Now, that may be a good argument to bring to the planning commission separately. But if you're commenting on the EIR, they don't care about the economics.
That's another report, isn't it?
There's, there are usually financial
Yeah,
reports and all those
financial,
kinds of things, and the planning commission and the board are supposed to read those as part of all their input.
Practically
didn't
speaking,
count.
economics is the driving force of CEQA. Because what'll happen, my take on the apartment house, for instance, they want to make more apartments so it'd be economically viable for them to build it. Well, my opinion is that the court's gonna come back and say, no, you gotta go do a bunch of things to cover all that extra housing, so you're gonna have to scale it back. Well, they're gonna say, well, this is not worth our while, and it goes away. In fact, I used to say this way back in the day, I could put a rendering plant on Capitol Park. The problem is, it would cost too much money to make it a viable project, but CEQA would have nothing to do with it. Just all the mitigation I'd have to do to take care of whatever.
Right.
And the problem in this county is they don't monitor mitigation. That really ticks me off.
And we'll get into that too.
The same man told me that the Board of Supervisors wears another hat and actually weighs in on any air quality decisions. So are they part of CEQA? Did you know that already?
Air quality is supposed to be part of CEQA. Our current interim CAO is supposedly an air quality person,
CAO is.
Chief Administrative Officer.
Okay, thank you.
Supposedly an air quality person, but I don't really know. He certainly wasn't helpful to us on the general plan.
Well, he literally said, and the Board of Supervisors has a second hat, so they take off that hat and put on this hat, that's how he said, and then they make those decisions with regard to the air quality and pollution.
Well, it shouldn't be, it's not a separate issue, that's part of CEQA, so I don't quite understand that.
Why he would say it that way?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of complicated flow chart of how the CEQA process works. But a project comes in and the staff makes some determination, oh, it could be this project is exempt from CEQA, boom, it goes to the end. Or if it's not, then they have to prepare this initial study, and if they find that there aren't any big significant impacts, then they can do what's called a negative declaration. And they may have to have some mitigations along with that. And this is what they did for town center apartments. They said, we don't need an EIR. We're just going to do a mitigated neg deck. Well, that was shot full of holes, and now hopefully we can get them to go back and do a full EIR. So this path is the EIR path, where the draft EIR comes out. There's this public review period, 45 days. Then it's sent back. They're supposed to answer all your questions and complete the final EIR. You don't get another chance to influence the wording in the EIR. This is the only chance you get to influence the actual EIR itself. Once the final EIR is completed, they only have to give the public 10-day notice before it goes to the planning commission. And then they can make a decision based on that. So, but there are things you need to do for the administrative record around the final EIR, and we'll talk about that too.
But in terms of timing of this getting to the planning commission, what we heard last night is it would probably be late spring, early summer before it got to the planning commission. So
June or July is it?
yeah, we're talking, May at the very earliest, June, July type of timeframe sounded more reasonable.
Well, sometimes it takes several months to
Right.
evangelize here that
I understand. They're planning on several months, I think, to announce it.
Supplies, we hire our other consultants to do that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Now, how thorough your questions are will influence how
The time,
long
when
it
it,
takes
we can
them to
delay
get
them
back.
that way.
Yes, for instance, on the general plan update, we generated 300 some pages of comments on the draft EIR. And then, of course, the county came back and blamed us for submitting all these comments
Of course.
and said, well, you're gonna have to go back and get more money to pay the consultants to, to address these comments.
Oh, well.
It's part of the public process.
How many letters did that?
No, this is one document submittal.
No, I mean, how many questions did you generate in terms of letters?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't letters,
It's
they're,
not letters,
this
it's
is a
just- this is how it
document
went,
that,
right.
we go through every portion, every page of the EIR.
Mhm.
We divided it up among,
John participated, we
Right.
did zoning,
Oh.
we did
Okay.
water,
we did,
traffic.
we did a section that said, these are all the things you haven't analyzed, and you need to add a section on that, hazardous materials and water
Okay.
quality or water supply,
Thank you.
so,
And then our attorney took all of our comments, added legal citations where it was appropriate, and then, put his letterhead on here essentially, and then this is our first submittal on the draft EIR.
Right.
Yeah, this is just one quick question. How much did you have to lay down to get an attorney in this case?
Well-
I would
Just to start.
Well,
His fees are,
his fees are extremely reasonable. I can't,
2,000, 3,000, 4,000?
it's on that order, yeah.
What are we waiting for?
And, I don't wanna give out the number because,
That's all
you know,
right,
he
close
may-
enough.
but it's on that order.
Okay.
he does work for community groups and specifically.
Yeah.
The lawyer for the Town Center Apartments, she did something kind of different. She said, I will stop at $20,000. And if it costs me more than that, that's my problem, but she said it will not cost you guys more than $20,000, and people contributed, so that seems to have worked out real good too, because she's really busy too with this.
I'm not sure how often you can get into this.
Environmental materials.
I'm married to one who kind of works
If-
around.
That would
You said the county told you that when you submitted that 300 pages, they said, well, we're gonna have to go get more money.
Right.
Now, it's my understanding that the developer has to pay the CEQA fees. So
But in this case, the developer was the county.
the county, okay, so the county had to go to the supervisor to get more.
Right, but in the case of a Parker development or something, yes, Parker development would have to pay the consultant fees to answer the questions on that.
All right, now, if again, and I don't know the county and how this operates out well yet, I'm getting it, but if the person who prepared this for the county, the draft EIR.
Right.
Has he or his company ever done work for Parker where he's been paid directly by Parker?
Oh, yeah.
Well, then, and the county decided that this person would be impartial and there's no conflict of interest?
No,
Yeah.
they don't,
Do you address conflicts of interest in this
No.
situation?
I asked them, no conflict. I asked the consultant
Um,
representative, no conflict.
so,
Can we raise it?
so this, let's talk about this on this slide here. Some of the harsh realities of CEQA. Environmental consulting is big business. We know personally several environmental consultants. And the way they operate is the client comes to them and says, this is the answer we want. Now write us an EIR that supports the answer that we want. And so they'll leave out pieces, they'll, try to downplay some of the impacts, understate them. And so, yes, it is a big issue, but I don't know. A conflict of interest is a different lawsuit, right? And that one probably is hard to prove, and that's a different kind of trial and a different kind of suit. If you do your job right, you should be able to uncover in your comments that, oh, they didn't analyze this, they didn't analyze that, they didn't give the impact of this. And so regardless of whether it was a conflict of interest or not, you at least have spelled out what the problems are with the EIR.
And is there a sample document that says everything that should be included?
I listed in one of these slides here, and I'll mail the slides to you and you can.
Okay,
check
good.
them out, but,
Because these are not,
Another way to get around this process, and I mentioned on the previous slide, a lot of times the county will say, oh, you just need a mitigated neg deck, you don't need an EIR, right? And then it's up to the citizens to sue, to say, no, you really need an EIR. And the other thing is public noticing. They only have to notice people within 1,000 feet of most projects. And they only have to put a tiny little ad in the classified section of the Mountain Democrat to notify you.
Buried clear back in the back and classifies, like you said, legal notices
Yes.
that nobody looks at unless you're trying to buy a business or something.
And
So-
how many people down here get the Mountain Democrat? That's the other piece of it, right? So there are lots of ways they use to get around these CEQA, technically, they're mostly legal, but they're kind of underhanded. This whole thing here, though, the environmental consulting, we have 2 of them in our neighborhood, in fact, and they admit this to us right up front when we go talk to them. It's big business. If you want to keep getting that client to coming back and paying you more money, you have to write their EIR. So you need to comment on the draft EIR. This completes the, or doesn't complete it, but it fills in the legislative or administrative record. You probably will uncover quite a few problems, things that they didn't analyze, things that need to be analyzed more. The FEI, final EIR will be a better document, and most importantly, it sets the groundwork for legal challenge.
Your litigation on the EIR, will that slow down any of these projects that are coming down the tunnel?
Potentially, the fact any projects that may depend on changes in this general plan update, it's hard to say what will happen. I'm not sure if we're going to ask for an injunction on certain aspects of this. Some developers may be afraid to proceed if the legal environment is murky and they don't really know what the ramifications will be. So it's hard to say.
I asked a question unknowingly, because I'm kind of new to this process last night, of the county, and I said, so what we were presented last night, the open space and all that, you're amending the general plan in essence, and he said, well, yes, and I said, well, how can you do that before? It was a really interesting answer, because it was, we can amend the general plan whenever we want. And I found that surprising, because I thought you had to follow the general plan. But he says, no, we're allowed to make amendments, and this is one of them, and
The board can amend the general plan 4 times a year.
Right, but there has to be public hearings and stuff, but they can just do it, yes.
yeah, I was surprised. I really was.
They very
So I wonder how many
specifically, if something is
administrators amended that.
inconsistent, we'll change the general plan and say, okay, now it's
Right.
And that's exactly what they did
We're
with
gonna
town
need
center
that.
apartments.
Okay,
The town center
It's
apartments were not even close to meeting the general plan requirements. And so they essentially wrote an entire new chapter for town center apartments and passed that as a general plan amendment. And,
Right.
and if you say, this doesn't meet the general plan, then they say, well, yes, it does.
Sure it
because
does.
we just changed it.
Because we just changed it, so that now it meets the general plan. And it's this circular logic that drives you
Yeah, so
crazy.
while you're on the subject, look at 8:30 a.m., December 7th,
Okay.
and the Cameron Park, it's 3321 Cameron Park Drive is where the civil, it's Division 9 that's being heard, but it's 8:30 in the morning. So,
That's Cameron Park, right?
Cameron Park, Division 9.
December 7th,
Isn't that the
8:30.
same?
Oh,
That was the same room they had.
Yes, same room, yeah, it's Warren Straisner as the judge, so.
No, this is the town center apartment.
oh,
So-
oh.
When you're
Just an interest.
reviewing the draft EIR, and I recommend that you guys get together as a group and you take, if any of you have expertise in or passion in a particular area, yeah,
Hazardous waste.
hazardous waste, if you have any experts that you know in water quality, traffic, those sorts of things, try to enlist them. And because obviously in 600 pages, this thing is too big to tackle on your own, so you've got to split it up and take bite-sized pieces and comment on them. And these are very common tactics that they'll use. You need to watch out for these. They'll they'll frequently make an assertion, you know, this doesn't impact traffic. Well,
What do you mean? It
where is the
your
evidence for
Beside
this? Okay, so you'll have to, and the next slide gets into how you have to phrase questions so that they have to answer them. You can't just say, I don't believe you, or I don't like this project.
Right, but in a lot of cases, they'll show you the traffic existing conditions and then after the project what the impacts are, right? But the numbers are bogus to start out with, so it doesn't do any good to say that, you know, it's unsupported because the grounding of the methodology that they use to predict it and to identify what's there is inconsistent with past practice. They keep changing the rules, so to speak, so.
But watch out, not just in traffic, but in all
Yep.
cases, these unsupported assertions or conclusions, make sure they provide the evidence that backs up their assertion or conclusion.
And then challenge the evidence once in a while, because the evidence isn't necessarily something that everybody agrees is factual.
Your mindset has to be, you are reading a 600-page lie. Okay.
Exactly.
Your job is to take this lie apart, dismantle it, and document, make them provide real answers and real data. They frequently will have impacts that are not analyzed. For instance, in the general plan update, they said, we don't have to analyze the noise impact because none of the policies change noise. Well, we came up with several pages of new policies that all had impacts on noise. So in the final EIR, they begrudgingly went back and answered those questions, though not very well. So, you know, again, this was another assertion, oh, we don't have to analyze noise because nothing here impacts. This is another one, incorrect project description that you'll see fairly often where that it will be changing over time. For instance, they'll have, you know, in the draft EIR, it'll be one project description, but in the final EIR, they've tweaked the description a little bit to make it sound not quite as bad in some areas. Do you have a specific example?
One thing I wanted to say is from the NOP to the draft EIR to the final EIR, that project description is supposed to be the same.
What is it in
Yeah,
Notice of preparation.
Okay.
That's the very first document that came out, in this case, a
That'll-
year and a half, 2 years ago.
that'll come out here. It's not in the flow chart, but right up here before the draft goes out, there's a notice of preparation. And then the public, mostly is meant for public agencies, but the public can get a hold of those and comment and say, I want you to study this, this, and this in the EIR. And they don't have to study those items.
The notice of preparation, I think for this project was what, 2012?
Yeah, I mean, it was years ago.
So back, you can look that document up, it's one of the documents that's filed on Legistar. That project description set what was supposed to be analyzed in the draft
Draft
EIR.
EIR. And
And so when you open your draft EIR and you have a project description, it should match what's in the NOP.
Okay.
And CEQA says that that project description is not supposed to change. It is supposed to be consistent all the way through, and you are supposed to be able to understand what it is. We found a lot of holes in that on the general plan update. So what you want to do is look at the project description really carefully, and are they doing what they said they were going to do?
So NOP, draft EIR, third document is
The final,
final
Final
EIR.
which you don't have yet.
Yeah.
If they,
John
if they,
asked.
if they did make a change, do they follow change
If they make a
protocol?
change, you want to look at what that change is.
But do they document the fact that they
Generally,
made
they'll do
a,
a track changes version and they'll do a clean version, so you have to go back and forth between both of them if you really want to
They didn't
understand,
do
what
that
did they
for us.
take out?
They didn't do that for us, John. They
I
just
said
changed it.
typically, not
Yeah.
always.
Yeah,
They just changed it, and we
Right.
found places in going through it and said, well, wait, this isn't what it looked like the first time. I went back and put them side by side. Oh, yeah, that's changed.
Yeah.
And so you have to look at it and say, what kind of a change is it? Is it something that we should have known about to be able to comment on?
Right, is it substantive or is it just, grammatical?
Yeah,
So,
and, what does that mean for the analysis? Does it affect anything else that's in the document? So it's kind of cumbersome, but the project description is totally worth looking at. You have to look at the project description carefully.
Well, then, are you better off, if you notice the difference between the NOP and the draft EIR, are you better off waiting to bring it up after the final EIR is done? Because then you can stop the process at that point, as opposed to giving you a chance to correct it when you have.
well, I would contact the planner right now, basically, and say, these are inconsistent, this is not consistent with CEQA, they have to go back and you guys gotta go back and redo the NOP.
I would make that one of your draft EIR comments. as in loop that in.
Why would you even get to the planner before that though, and let them know that they're already in trouble with this thing?
My experience in that is that they will change it on you and you will not buy yourself any time. Planning, you can try that.
Well,
You guys do what works.
it depends on who it is that's doing it, but
I
yeah.
found a lot of Band-Aids being put on. through
Yeah,
the
well, you used to
course of
work
time.
up there at one point in time, and
Uh,
yeah, so you kind of have an insider view of it, right? Yeah.
They like to put Band-Aids on things, and then you find another thing, and they put a Band-Aid on that.
Yeah,
So you know that there's holes all over the place, and they keep plugging them up.
yeah.
They do,
I'm
they
wrapping
do.
it up.
When you do make a comment on any one of these things to watch for, do you have to give the page, the line, and the exact quote?
Ideally, yes, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. Let me finish this one and then we'll get to specific how you comment. So this one was important. This is also very important. Frequently, they're supposed to analyze reasonable alternatives to the project. And usually what they do is they pick these alternatives that clearly are bogus to start with. You know, why would you ever propose this as an alternative? And so of course they do all the study and say, oh, it's not feasible. Well, of course. So what you need to do is if you can think of a reasonable alternative, then you suggest it and you ask them to study it.
And I think that what APAC is gonna do, if I get some voice in that, is we're gonna propose an alternative that sets aside the 98-acre golf course as a reserve with conditions on it that it can't be approved for any further development for a given period of time, et cetera, because that carves that out immediately as a reserve. And then they can work on redesigning and redoing the other stuff, but at least that's one alternative that might resonate with the supervisors to give them an out and not allow the golf course to be consumed with the rest of the specific plan. Because we're talking about 98 acres out of the 341. So my view is try to preserve that and then separate out the other and then obviously comment on the other as well. But if they'll work with that and we haven't had a lot of success in getting them to pick other alternatives, you suggest them and it just kind of rolls off, so.
But in the EIR process, if you suggest an alternative and request them to study it, they have to do that.
Okay, good.
So I mean, the alternatives and the EIR, the draft EIR, the alternatives were build it the way it is, don't do anything, change nothing, or then I think it was build 800 as opposed to 1,000 or whatever the numbers were. So you could say 500, carve out the golf course, do not build in this area, preserve this, and then build 500 apartments or small single-family homes or whatever it is in a different area. That's an alternative that they.
Right.
Okay.
And so, your group will have to get together and figure out, you want to propose 1 or 2 or 3 alternatives for them to study. But, that's, you have to kind of lay out the details of your alternative and please analyze the impact of this alternative.
So that formula can be used throughout, so an example of hazardous waste mitigation, that they say we're gonna use the dust truck, we're gonna bury it on site. And if anybody trucks off-site and we use state and federal roads, then the carrier is responsible. You could suggest something that's followed, that's more, more effective and also sanctioned by the EPA or something.
Right.
And suggest that they
Study it.
study it.
Yes, please analyze
And
this.
those aren't alternatives, those are comments on that specific section.
Right.
Say that again? The alternatives he's talking about are different than the mitigation you just mentioned. There are, what you're talking about.
Well, it kind of gets back to impacts that are not analyzed. You've identified an impact that they're not really going to mitigate, right? So you got to identify the fact that they really need to study that and determine what mitigation can be done, i.e.
But it's specific to the
Transportation.
section that you're talking about, like asbestos or hazardous, whatever. That's different than alternatives. The alternatives
This is a
are
project
specific.
level alternative.
Right,
Oh,
very,
okay,
very high level.
There's
level
project A,
alternative,
project B,
internal
project C.
alternatives.
They always have to have a no project alternative, which says nothing changes. It's
Okay,
never
got it.
selected, by the way.
How do you solve our problem?
And then the project alternative, and then 1 or 2 alternates, but
Okay, got
you
it.
gotta force more than that where it makes sense.
I just, that reminds me of
For that alternative. Okay.
another one that we,
How many people did you have in your little troop that?
not enough.
We started with Do you remember how many were at the library that night?
Yeah,
There were probably 30 people. at the
30,
library,
35.
And we immediately dwindled to about a dozen.
Unfortunately, that's what happens, so,
It
yeah.
was a lot of work, and John was one of them, and we worked on it, and
So
then
Dawn,
by
are
the
you,
time we got to the final EIR, we were down to maybe half a dozen. Now, they're still involved and supportive, but it's
It's beyond some
very
people's ability to take the time to really try to understand this thing. This is
It's very
complex.
hard. It's very
And every time you
complex.
come across one of those questions and it's answered by something, it creates 3 more questions. Well, why was this over here? You know, so you end up spending a lot of time just trying to orient yourself to what this thing is and how to deal with it. It's not a normal document.
Doesn't look good if we
Well,
only
I
have
mean-
this many tonight, does it?
what you're saying, me and my wife, we go to this and we get the comment page, and then we just put stuff on there, what about Measure Y? We're concerned about density. Did they just crumble that up and throw it away?
Yeah.
So we're not really doing anything when we list 20 things on there.
Well, you have to, well, it depends on how you phrased it, so that's the next slide, and we'll talk about.
But you almost have to refer to a section of it. This
Right.
section is remiss or inadequate because it doesn't address this and you need to analyze this and, you know, that's the level of detail. You can't just throw out Measure Y as a high level statement and expect them to do anything with it.
So, I just added this while we were talking, I had neglected to put that bullet. So mitigation measures that aren't effective, you'll see this all the time in here where you just mentioned one.
Right.
We're gonna mitigate this by, you know, daily having somebody mop the floor and,
Right.
you know, whatever. Well, no, you aren't, you know, and I'll talk about more about mitigation measures, but you know, if you find a mitigation measure you think is not, sufficient, you need to call them out on that, and we'll talk about how to do that.
So I had a discussion with Dave DeFonte last night because I said the biggest thing I've come across so far is traffic mitigation, where they say we have definite traffic impacts. One of them's down on Green Valley Road, one of them's the Highway 50 intersection, and they're going to mitigate that by paying into the TIM fee account, right? And they said that does absolutely nothing because the TIM fee accounts change all the time, and it may be 20 years after the project's built. So the project didn't mitigate this.
Right.
It came, so concurrency in the way you do that. He said the only way you can typically do that is force a condition within the approval cycle, or basically make them go through a development agreement that defines the specific payments for improvements that they are gonna make in lieu of putting into the TIM. And that's what you really wanna have for the project to pay its own way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just gets diluted in this big fund and you have all the impacts, but you don't see the relief. You don't see the mitigation until many years later. Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other big one that they
Yeah.
frequently do is in CEQA, you have to analyze the cumulative impact of a project. And that means not only do you analyze the impact of the project you're looking at, but all the impact, you have to add that to the impact of all the projects that you know about. And they very often fail to do that. And
Right.
it's, for instance, the 12,000 homes in Folsom, they actually have to include the impact of those in, you know, the cumulative impact analysis. Because those 12,000 homes have a huge impact on traffic on Highway 50. Well, you know, so you add all these other developments that they know are already approved, all the ones that have been proposed, plus this one.
So that's something to look for in your EIR.
Right.
What have they included
Okay.
in the cumulative impacts?
And what are those 12,000 homes called? Does it have a development name or?
South of 50,
What is it?
South Folsom.
Okay,
Yeah.
South Folsom.
South 50.
10,800.
And you really have to nail them down on this because when,
Thank you.
on the town center mitigated neg deck, I asked a question. Please list the developments that you used to analyze the cumulative impact. Well, Roger Trout came back and said, we used all the appropriate ones.
Right. We hand selected the ones that were appropriate and we used those.
It's like, what were they?
Yeah, and see, since that was a mitigated neg deck, they don't have to give you a detailed answer. In an EIR, they have to give you a detail. So
Yeah.
on here, I said, please list the specific developments, and I gave all the examples, Marble Valley, Lime Rock, blah, 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 blah. And so they eventually came back, but they still were not straight on the answer.
Oh, it was.
What about, you had mentioned earlier that obviously they're environmental consultants. Many of them, their bread and butter is working for developers.
Right.
Are, given a short time frame that we have and you know, I don't know how much people here can devote to this, and if there's only 10 or 12 of us, it's gonna be a big project. Is it possible to hire an environmental who specializes in opposing, I mean, who's got all the expertise, knows his 600, he will know, or she will know, the buds things that, you know, they can sort of give us an overall directive of where our impact by focusing on certain things is more important. Because I don't know if anyone here is a water expert and can become a quasi-water expert in 30 days.
So you are gonna cover the Infocino capture sheet though, right? Where you go through and you capture specific comments, and then he will, you know, your attorney will work with you to put those into a more specific assessment relative to the adequacy of the document, et cetera, et cetera. Because he taught us
Yeah,
basically how to go through and glean that information as part of your review.
The attorney did.
The attorney did. There was actually that capture sheet, I'll call it a capture sheet, but,
I don't know what capture sheet is.
okay.
Capture sheet.
I just want to find out how can we most effective, given the limited manpower, people power that we have, limited dollars unless we start writing checks, and limited time.
Yeah.
So do you know is there an environmental people who specialize in taking a developer saying it's just a pile of crap, and this is why, and here's 50 pages, and we build up on that?
It would be nice.
it's possible, but I don't know anything, you know, Tom Infocino or another attorney might be able to point you to someone. The other thing is Tom might be able to direct you, okay, maybe you can ignore these following, you know, section A, B, and C, but you should really focus your effort on these 3 sections, you know. I can't speak for him.
If we had known of someone to contact like that,
We would have done
we'd have done it.
Okay.
So, I don't know. Good luck, Yellow Pages.
Sierra Club,
Friends.
start with the Sierra Club and we'll go from there.
It's too
You-
late.
you-
We only have a month and a half. No one's gonna jump on board and do all this work, legal wise, in a month and a half. There's no way.
Well, they only have to do a
Don't
couple
give
of
up so
things to
quick.
start,
Only
don't
a
they?
couple.
I mean, didn't you
Well-
find that? I mean, when you hire one of these guys, hire an
Oh,
attorney.
well, when we hired Tom, he's very easy to work with, I mean, he
Well, I
even-
mean, you immediately did a few things that just,
Right.
everybody just went, oh, okay, sure, we could probably help you
Right.
with that a little. I mean, that scares a lot of, that's stuff.
Yeah, I mean.
No, I don't
and-
think anybody walked away and said, yeah, we can do that.
No,
I
in
think
other
it was more
words,
of a panic.
what
Oh
I'm
my
saying,
God.
what I'm trying to say, I guess, is the best way to put it, is that when you have counsel, it gives more weight to consideration for your requests and things like that. And there may be something that he knows of, for example, like a tool, well, I can ask for this and that will delay that. I can't speak to this process, but
It's possible, I think, you know, we would have used it with us if there had been a way to
And you- it
to
didn't
delay
have
the
anything,
draft.
you did
Yeah.
No, I think
So are we
we
But,
too
but
late?
Tom emphasized the top 10 and those kinds of things. Are you gonna cover any of that?
Well.
Because that's where this
I
sheet we
will-
recorded this stuff come into play.
Okay, I'm gonna email out Tom's document also. We have about a, 30 or
Okay.
40-page document from Tom, and I'll forward it to everyone
Okay.
here.
Is
Okay.
that the document you're talking about?
No,
I don't know what document he's talking
there was a spreadsheet type of thing where you collect the information as you go
That
through and
was-
analyze
Oh,
each
it's a flow
section. So
chart, like a flow chart.
it's not a flow chart.
Are
It's,
you
it's
talking about
the
the
way to
very
collect
end, the
information of
final
where you,
EIR?
There was one for the final EIR.
for the final EIR.
Okay, see, yeah, that comes into play after the final EIR comes back.
Actually, no, this was for the draft EIR. This was right at the front end of it. It's a draft EIR. But it was a way of going through and capturing notes and commenting on things and then basically giving a preliminary ranking and then rolling all that stuff up and trying to say, here's our top 10. That's what I thought the intent of using that was. I used it for a while in capturing some of the things and then said, well, I'm not
Do
sure.
you have it?
It makes
Yeah, I've
sense
got
that
it.
if you,
Okay,
if we have 100 different things.
The Dirty does in the
that, you know,
top 10.
different
He
pages,
Final EIR.
But if you have the top 10 and you say, all right, these are the ones that are gonna have the most
I'll
impact
go back and look.
and that are
I've
gonna
got
be
it.
most, in your argument to the planning commission, to the board, these are the ones that are gonna have the most impact. I'd rather we spend our time focusing on those top 10 and not trying to comment on every specific thing in
No.
600 pages.
I agree, and you know, that's where having Tom in the room can help you prioritize this. What he's always said to us, and when you're looking at this stuff, don't get lost in every single detail. What the judges are looking for is blood on the floor, as he puts it.
Right.
And so, who is going to be damaged, either physically or economically damaged as a result of passing this project? And so, traffic, you know, that's a good one. Air quality, asbestos,
Litigation.
um,
Water.
water,
Oh, yeah.
but water's a tough one.
It is a tough one. but
Well, if they bury hazardous waste under that road.
It's tough because of EID and their dishonesty
You
too,
have to
but
prove
it's,
that. I mean,
but it's gotta be in there.
it can't be an assertion, you've gotta have
That's
some
true.
actual
That's
fact.
true.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything.
So again, remember that phrase, blood on the floor, that's what judges are looking for. They want to actually see,
Who's hurt?
really, people who will be damaged by this, not just some theoretical problem that might be created by the project.
So is that, it can't be economic damage though, can it?
No, that's true.
What I suggest is if they'll help out, if John and Wayne, 1 or 2 nights, if we can get this building and we just set up tables and we can either download it on here or have some hard copies and, because I don't know how to ask the questions. Obviously, other projects that we've all lost, I haven't asked the right questions. I just go, me and my wife sit down and go, this is what we're concerned about. And they don't care. It has to be asked in a certain way. So in maybe 1 or 2 nights, each of us can have 10 or 15 questions that we want answered. Because that's what I'm concerned about. I want my questions to count. I want someone to go,
Right.
oh crap, we're gonna have to do some research now.
And Don's just kinda getting to that part of the discussion here, so.
And that's all good stuff, Lenny, I agree with you, and in fact, it may not be possible to go through all 600 pages. So each of you takes a section, you read it through thoroughly and write down your top 5 things that you think are the most,
Egregious, yeah, there's a good term, right?
yes.
Blood on the floor, what creates blood on the
Yeah.
floor?
So maybe-
So what just irritates the heck out of you, you're irritated for a reason.
Right,
And so maybe each of you only answers 5 questions in these sections, but as long as they are the tough questions and they're forced to answer them, that can be okay. The comments, we talked a little bit about this. Comments like, I don't like the project, or this was
That's
too
what I
many,
do.
too many houses, or whatever.
Yeah.
No, sorry, in the EIR, that might be a good argument for the planning commission or for the board, but no, in the EIR, they'll just say, comment noted, and go to the next one. But questions or requests that you submit on the draft EIR actually have to be, they require a response by law. And the responses have to be in a similar level of detail as the question. So if you ask a very simple question, they can give us a very simple answer. If you ask a very detailed 4-paragraph question, they kind of have to give a very detailed 4-paragraph answer. If you're reading the EIR and you don't understand something, ask for clarification. And on these, I forgot to put in here, give the citation, so it's page number, paragraph. And usually what you can do is you can quote, cut and paste the little, the line or the paragraph out of the EIR in your document. Page 473, paragraph 2.
here it is, right?
Says this, I don't understand what you mean by such and such, please explain. And again, you have to say, please show, please provide, please analyze, please explain. If you don't ask for an action, they won't do it.
That's a great point.
Something that
But I mean,
Tom-
is this something we can do, John and Wade, in 2 nights, just so everyone has listed their concerns but are asking it the right way? Here's an example. This thing's been out for 7 years. I've lived here quite a while now. It really concerns me that they didn't show the houses, but they're gonna build a 15-acre park next to the freeway. Well, it concerns me that the children of this community are gonna be playing baseball and soccer next to the freeway.
Right.
But I don't know how to say, analyze this, are they gonna be taking in more pollutants or
They
whatever?
do, and there's research on it, yes, absolutely, heavy metals.
But I don't know how to ask the question, is
So
what I'm saying.
you would have to say something like, please analyze the impact of exposure of children playing on the ball field, next to the freeway. Please analyze the exposure
And I
to
did
heavy
that
metals.
last night, and I'll tell you the answer that I got, because I didn't know how to phrase it the way you're teaching us.
That's my problem, thank you.
And the answer was, it's level, we picked it because it's level,
No, they didn't.
and I said, well, the environmental issues are, it's the most level, you get here and here. And you could see the dodge and turn. I mean, it was very clear that being specific in our questions so that absolutely right. I didn't know, and the same with the traffic. I didn't know to ask, and you get the dodge and weave,
Right.
and it came back. So this is really helpful, and
When did you do this?
last night
At
at
the meeting.
Oh,
last
at the
night.
meeting.
No, they weren't helpful at all.
So if you wanna, yeah, they didn't, no one brought business cards except for Trout, and no
Yeah.
one could answer anything, and I just kept pressing and finally got a couple.
Well, they can
answers.
answer it, they just don't want to
Exactly,
answer
but
it.
Trout was like,
Oh, I know.
so to do that, you would say, please analyze the effect on children and
On children's
Oh, I
health.
love
on
that.
children's health, being close within X number of feet to a highway and the effect of pollutants on those children.
Right.
Oh, my
That's
goodness,
excellent.
we need to, John, is this something we can do
Automobile
in
And
one or
they're-
two nights?
And they're,
If I
It's tough to do it in one or two nights. You can
Respiratory-
summarize in one or two
No,
nights.
no, if I tell you.
right, okay,
Here are the 5 or 6 things I'm concerned about, you can tell me how to write them.
yeah, then
We can certainly help with that, yeah.
You know, instead of just saying I'm concerned about density,
Yep.
how do I write?
Right now, John's here, he's on APAC. We need to be
Right.
focusing and helping with APAC or vice versa, APAC is helping us.
But APAC doesn't do lawsuits, so if this is,
No.
right up front, this is gonna end up in a
No,
lawsuit, APAC will not do that,
lawsuits,
so.
The questions that need to be answered because they're inadequately spelled out in the EIR. We are gonna have some questions. We need to coordinate those questions with you, whether it comes as a separate document from us, that's probably what we find. But
Yeah.
there's no thing in the law that says you can't, two people can't submit the same question. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
You submit it, but we need to coordinate so we do focus on some questions
Right.
that can, again, it's just like Googling something. You can get different answers on Google by rephrasing it to the way you
Right.
finally, you'll get that answer. And just like they're saying, we need to rephrase the question in such that it gets, but expert witnesses.
But sometimes in their
these experts will
response-
come- the experts are paid for by the developer. And we don't, to answer your question, we could hire some experts. But, yeah, we haven't got the time to do that or the money. And with all due respect, since I dealt with experts, I mean, whatever you can pay for, you'll get your opinion, just as you start out with. This is the answer we want, hire the expert to come up with that answer.
John mentioned, some of you had a question about what is a